äußerst charmante Begrüßung. Ich will ganz wenig zu mir sagen und ganz viel über ein, wie ich finde, sehr, sehr spannendes Thema. And I'll switch to English for I know we have English participants. So, thanks for having me at TEDx. It's a big honor for me to be here, although the weather is bad, but I'm sure inside it's warm here and the inspirations will flow today. So, let's roll. Female leadership, when we think or listen or sort of create thoughts on female leadership, we usually think of some women in leadership roles, women like Margaret Thatcher, women like Hillary Clinton, of course. And in Germany, after the grand election and the marvelous victory of Mrs. Merkel, of course, Angie, as we call her, or Angela Merkel. And the interesting thing is, you know, when I met Mrs. Merkel 4 years ago for the last grand election, I was in a campaign mobilizing young voters. I had a question to her, not concerning my book, as you see there on the picture, but on what she did to get where she was, because she was surrounded in her party mostly by men. And I think this is a very interesting thing when you think about female leadership, that mostly men are around those women, and often they underestimate the power of women, and I'm sure Angie could tell you a lot about that one. So my question was, what did she know that all the men in her party did not know? And I had an idea, and I decided to ask female leaders around the world, 60 women in 30 countries, how they got where they got, on the top of the ladder of success, all the way up, often underestimated by the media, by men, by a lot of people, but they finally got, and they were very successful. Nobel Prize winners, Olympic athletes, writers, artists, very powerful women. And we did a book on that, asking them and sharing their stories. And the best thing about the book is not just the inspiration. Inspirations are great, but 100% of the revenue of that book went into girls' educational projects. So I love that part, and especially the girls that sort of could use that money for their education, because I don't know if you know, more than 180 million girls are not allowed to go to school around the globe. So they will never, ever use their potential to become a female leader. So we use that money to help them, and I want to tell some of the very, very inspiring stories of those powerful women with you. One of them is Jutta Kleinschmidt. Who knows Jutta? Yeah. Oh, okay. She's the first female winner of the Dakar race. And you know, if you talk about male-dominated industry, I mean, driving cars is very male-dominated. It's so male-dominant that they all think we can't drive cars, right? So she was the first one who did it, and I discussed long time with her what her initial lead was for leadership, and she said, I just wanted to do this. And I met another very amazing woman, one of the, as Time has said, one of the 100 most influential women around the world, Zuraya Pagzad from Afghanistan, social activist, and she founded a foundation years ago. It's called Voice of Women. In the backstage of an Afghanistan little hut, and she decided, with no money, no contacts, no sponsors, no political power, that it's about time that the educational system in Afghanistan changes, that women are allowed to learn again. So she has built Voice of Women, one of who knows the organizations of the United Nations, one of the most powerful organizations today. And when she got asked from her peers, you know, should we not just call it Afghan Voice of Women, you know, having nothing, she said, no, I dream big, talking about vision. Zuraya Pagzad. I met another amazing woman who has a sad day today, as all of us, because Nelson Mandela died. She's from South Africa, Cathy O'Dowd. And actually, she met Mandela after she had climbed Everest, and she was the first woman ever that was able to climb it from both sides. And what she has learned on that trip up the mountain, by the way, the only woman in a male team, and that's a very funny story. I know we don't have a lot of time in the talks, but I'll tell it anyways. She got to that team because the men were forced by Mandela that one woman should be on their team. And I know all of you speak English very well, so I'll say the ad, although it's not probably politically correct the wording, but they placed that ad in the South African Sun, and the ad said, if you have the balls to get up that the highest mountain on earth with just men, write to us. And Kathy did. And she went up, and some of you might know the first trip was not successful. They had to get back because there was a big storm. And Kathy was the one in the team that was not able to step over a dead body in front of her. So discussing with somebody like that, courage, you know what courage means. She simply says courage is each day in my life to go one step beyond my strength. So talking about female leadership, I met Birgit Fischer, actually very close to Berlin, because she lives outside of Berlin. Who knows Birgit? Yeah, she's the, I have to say, I have to admit, I didn't even know when I did that research to write the book. Birgit is the most successful Olympionique ever. She has the most gold medalists, European medals, whatever you can think of. And I thought of success, meeting all those great women, as a sort of a range. You know, there are some people that are not very successful, and there are some that are very successful, and there's a big block in the middle. But Birgit is like here, I mean, like more successful than any other person. And I asked her, I said, how did you do that? I said, do you have a special body? Do you train in a specific way? Do you think, what kind of food do you eat? And she said, none of that. I have a regular body like an athlete, but I listen to my own inner voice, what's good for my training, and what I need to reach the highest top. And I trust myself. So I went to India, met Ilhabad, together with Nelson Mandela, part of the elders, the founder of World Women's Bank, and she was a lawyer in India, was in parliament, had a pretty good career, and she decided to step out of that because of all of the injustice done to women in India. And she founded an organization, SEVA. SEVA is an organization that formulates the rights for women that have no rights in India. And those are the women that are self-employed. They sell food on the street, merchandise. And those women in the beginning, when Ela started to work, in the beginning they didn't even have access to the garbage colonies, to collect garbage and to sell it, to feed their children. And you know why they didn't have access? Because they were women. And Ilhabad changed that. And today SEVA is one of the most powerful organizations in India with more than 1 million members. And I talked to her about topics like integrity and all those issues. When we think about leadership or female leadership, of course we have to think about the things like courage, what Kathy had to do up that mountain, about the vision of Zoraya, our own vision. Where do we want to go? How big do we dare to dream? How fair do we want to play in the game out there that is definitely not fair? It's just, first of all, it's mostly a male game out there. And second off, we all know it's not a fair world out there. So how do we as female leaders adjust to our inner compass that is based on integrity? And all the female leaders I met said that, exactly that. So how do we learn to focus on exactly what we want? And those female leaders I have met, as you can imagine, they were very focused. And they all talked about something I really want to bring up to you because I thought it was really important, and this is the power of teamwork. And teamwork is not just the team in the corporate office. Teamwork is also the team that you have at home, your husband, your partner, your friends. And if this team is not supportive to your goals, you might have a problem with your leadership role one day. So, right? Defining the team is very important. And then, in one interview in Dublin, I met a woman that asked me a question that turned my life around 4 years ago. And that woman was Caroline Casey, also another speaker at TEDx. Hi, Caroline, if you ever see that. So she asked me a question, and that question was, and I was supposed to ask her questions in the interview, and she said, Kerstin, please tell me, what was your biggest dream when you were a child? I was like, huh? Childhood, once you've grown up, is so far away. And I did not have a clue. Not a clue. I mean, I'm not that old that my childhood is so far away, but I did not have a clue, and that made me very sad. So I decided to remember, and this is the story I want to share with you. I remembered my childhood in South Africa. It was named. That's me there with that little lion. And I remember that this time, great pants, huh? Yeah, great pants. I thought so. I love that teddy. Anyways, I decided to rethink my happiest times in my life. And that was when I lived as a kid in South Africa. So I took a decision. If something makes you that happy, you better step into that. And I decided to become a ranger in Kruger Park. So I left my corporate office, I left my team. I was very worried that they all thought I gone crazy. I left my friends and I went back to South Africa. With 42 years old, I went there, lived in the bush, hardly any electricity, in a ranger team, of course all men. Again, it's sort of story of my life. That's my tent up there. And I learned how to shoot, because this is what rangers do to protect their team. Yeah, there are my boys. And as you can see, or as you might imagine, some of them were thrilled to have a girl or a lady with them. And they said, first thing, there is no privileges here for you. And I said, I know, I'm 42 years old. And by the way, most of them could have been my sons anyways. So I had the best time of my life. We had great sightings, but of course, not every day was happy. It was tough. I mean, this is not the toughest thing I had to do, dig out that stupid Jeep there. But, tough things like dealing with snakes and scorpions and all the things that we girls really love to do. And of course, the men always watching like, would you dare just watch that scorpion? Like, oh, well, I don't have to, right? We don't have to prove that we are daring. We just are what we are. So I did become a ranger. Nobody believed it. Actually, my corporate team here, they placed bets against me. I didn't know before I came back, but I did it. And I want you to meet this young lady here. Her name is Ntombi. This was the day after I had finished that course. And we went to a camp, and Ntombi's mother got killed, so she was raised by the people in the camp, that cheetah. And I asked what the meaning of Ntombi is. And the guy there from the camp, he said, Ntombi, that's the Afrikaans name for a young girl, Mädchen. And in that second, tears came into my eye, because I understood that my own circle of dreaming something really powerful, wanting something really badly for years, and just forgetting about your power that you had as a kid, this naive belief of this is what I want to do, I forgot. And I remembered thanks to Ntombi. And I realized one thing, that all the leaders I have met and that we are working with today in the foundation, what we didn't explicitly say, but that what all of them lived, and this is leadership starts from within us. We can go to leadership trainings all we want and listen to all those great speakers and do the great seminars. Leadership is within each of us, and this is what I've learned. And also, what I really want to say, because Germany is discussing the women's quota and all that political stuff, I think leadership does not ask for gender. I think it doesn't even ask for age or race. We can have young leaders that are so powerful because they believe in themselves and they have a clear focus on what they want to do. So also, I want to say, our male-dominated world as we see it here in the industry, this is just a very single-minded view of the world. If you live in Africa for some time, as I did, some of the most powerful animals are led by women. Elephants, for example, or the most powerful fighters in the African bush, hyenas. She doesn't look that powerful now there on the picture, but I'm telling you, when she's old, and this is a girl, lady hyena, when she's old, because she was born as a woman, she will lead her whole pack. So what we do here in our world is like, we want some quota women up there in the leadership position, but by the way, we are the boys club there. So I want to sort of bring questions to you and sort of remind you of what you have in yourself. And if you go out there to a place that's outside of your comfort zone, it doesn't have to be Africa. It could be a talk with your parents. It could be a place where you always wanted to go to. if you just decide not to stop growing, if you decide that you want to continue to grow and to learn, you automatically dare, and you automatically turn into the leaders that in all the theory, all the people tell you. And I want to add something else about female leadership, because there's so much, and I do TV talks for a political purpose, and I always get asked about that, so let me mention that. Why is female leadership so important today? Because we want to be fair to women? Is that the reason? I think the reason is because we need them. We need different solutions today in our society, and those solutions come out of your minds, out of your hearts, because you know them, because you are different, because you are a female leader. And those leaders we need because they are different. And of course they will work in a male team, right? We're talking about mixed leadership and not about some single-minded thing. And one final thing I'd love to share with you is my own learning about what I call passion and purpose. I was always, being an entrepreneur for over 20 years, I was always driven sort of, for a purpose, with goals, with clients, with projects and all of that. But sometime along the way, and I'm so thankful for Caroline and for people like you to remind me, I lost the passion for what's really important. And in Africa, thank God, I found that again, as I said, within myself. And in that second, passion and purpose met. And that second, I understood that you can't be a leader without being really in touch with your inner passion. If it's Africa or something else, it doesn't matter. But you have to redetect it once you're old, and you're just doing Alltag, as we call it in Germany, right? You do the same thing every day with family and job, and all of a sudden you think, oh, passion, it's P-A-S-S-I-O-N, where is it? So I followed the passion. We've built that female leadership foundation, Astraea, called after the Greek goddess of justice. And we've built a campaign which is called 1,000 Faces of Hope, where we detect girls, identify girls around the globe that want to become female leaders one day, but they can't because they're not allowed to go to school. And we support partners in Morocco and many other countries, in India and Bangladesh, so that those girls have a hope just because they have access to education. This is a girl in Bangladesh after the garment industry catastrophes, a girl in Kenya, and girls in South America. And all we do is we just help them on their way to become leaders they want to become, because they follow their own ways. And I know all of you have a photo like this in your drawer. You might not show it publicly, but I decided to do that because what I want to bring to you today here in Berlin is we have all somehow looked like that, but you decide at one point in your life what you turn into. If you become and sometimes you are more than one person, sometimes you're not just the corporate leader or arranger, sometimes you have many, many powerful sides, and that's my message to you, should live that. Because those are the leaders we need. And I remember my first interview for that book, I met Shirin Ebadi, one of the first Iranian female Nobel Prize winners, and she said, before we start that interview, let me just remind you what I remind my kids every single day. And that is, don't take me as role model. Look into yourself. Great way to start an interview, by the way. Don't ask me, look into yourself. I'm like, okay, well, let me write this down. So, and this is really the message. So I want to ask you today here in Berlin, at that snowy day, and in a couple of years from now, you might remember that day because you took a decision today. It was a day that Nelson Mandela died, and it was a day when you took a decision to answer that question. So I'm asking you, what is your question? What is your passion? What is your passion that makes you automatically a leader? Because leadership is within all of us. You don't have to make training courses. So what is your answer? What is it? And you can find it. And if you don't remember, don't worry. I was so sad because I couldn't remember, but you go somewhere and you do remember. You think of the strongest moments in your life, of the happiest, and all of a sudden, memories come back. So I hope you find the answer, and I'm very happy to stay in touch with all of you. So let's share, and let's all have a great day. Thank you.